The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a vast metal canyon. Thousands of seats rose in circles around the central speaking platform. Each seat held a different alien species, their forms ranging from the elegant blue-skinned Zephyrians to the massive, rock-like granite lords. The air hummed with translation, devices working overtime to convert hundreds of different languages into understandable speech. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked down the long path to the speaking platform. Her simple black suit looked plain compared to the elaborate robes and armor worn by the alien representatives. She carried only a small datapad and a briefcase containing Earth's formal application to join the Intergalactic Defense Coalition. The Zephyrian delegate, Lord Vexithara, looked down at the human woman with barely hidden disgust. His tall, thin frame and glowing eyes made him appear almost godlike compared to the small human below. "So this is what Earth sends us," he said to his companion. "A single female of their warrior species." The crystalline ethereal representative, whose name was a series of musical tones that no human throat could produce, chimed softly. The translation came through as cold and factual. Scans indicate elevated stress hormones and rapid heartbeat. The creature is afraid but attempting to hide it. How curious. Sarah reached the platform and placed her materials on the speaking podium. The council chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. She looked up at the assembled representatives of 47 different worlds and began to speak. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of thousands of alien eyes upon her. "I am Ambassador Sarah Chen, speaking for the people of Earth and the human colonies. We come before you today to request membership in the Intergalactic Defense Coalition." A sound like grinding stone came from the Granite Lord section. The translation device labeled it as laughter. "The mammals think they can join us," rumbled the massive rock being. "What do they offer? What can these soft creatures possibly bring to our great alliance?" Sarah opened her datapad and began reading from humanity's prepared statement. "Earth offers a fleet of 300 vessels, 12 million trained soldiers, and advanced manufacturing capabilities. We have successfully defended our system against hostile forces and have established peaceful colonies on 15 worlds." More laughter echoed through the chamber, this time from multiple species. The draconian representative, General Skardash, stood up on his powerful legs. His reptilian form towered over most other species, and his voice carried the authority of someone used to commanding vast armies. 300 ships? He roared, his translator crackling with his amusement. "The Draconian Empire maintains a fleet of over 50,000 vessels. Your entire military could not defeat a single one of our battle groups. What protection could you possibly offer to worlds that have defended themselves for thousands of years?" Sarah remained calm, though her knuckles whitened as she gripped the podium. "Humans may be new to galactic politics, but we have something that experience has taught us. We adapt quickly to new situations. We find solutions where others see only problems." The ethereal representative chimed again. "The creature speaks of adaptation. Our records indicate that humans have been engaged in constant warfare with their own species for their entire recorded history. They cannot even achieve peace among themselves. How can they help maintain peace in the galaxy?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Sarah felt the weight of centuries of human conflict pressing down on her. Every war, every battle, every mistake her species had ever made seemed to be on trial in this moment. "It is true that humans have fought wars," she said quietly. "But each conflict taught us something new about ourselves and about the cost of violence. We learned that the strongest victory is the one that turns enemies into allies. We learned that protecting the innocent is more important than defeating the strong." Lord Vexithara stood up, his blue skin seeming to glow with disdain. Pretty words from a species that still maintains nuclear weapons capable of destroying their own planet. "The Zephyrian Council has reviewed human history extensively. You are a violent, unstable species driven by emotions rather than logic. You would be a danger to every civilized world in the galaxy." The accusations came faster now, each species adding their own concerns. The insectoid hive spoke of human unpredictability. The energy beings questioned human motives. The Aquatic Federation worried about human expansion into their territory. Sarah listened to each criticism without interruption. When the chamber finally fell quiet, she spoke again. "You judge us by our past, and that is fair. We have made mistakes. We have fought wars. We have sometimes chosen violence when wisdom would have been better." She looked around the chamber, meeting as many alien gazes as she could. But we have also chosen to be better than we were. We have learned from our mistakes. We have built a civilization that values life above conquest, knowledge above power. General Skardash laughed, a harsh sound like breaking rocks. Words, any species can speak of peace when they are weak. How do we know you will not become conquerors when you grow strong? How do we know you will not turn your weapons against us? Because, Sarah said simply, we have already had the chance to do exactly that. The chamber fell silent. Sarah opened her briefcase and pulled out a small device. With the Council's permission, she activated a holographic display that showed the Sol system. 3 months ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected a fleet approaching Earth. 27 vessels of unknown origin, heavily armed, moving with obvious hostile intent. The hologram showed the approaching ships, sleek and dangerous looking. Our military leaders recommended immediate attack while the enemy was still far from Earth. Our weapons could have destroyed them all before they came close to our world. The hologram shifted to show human ships moving to intercept. Instead, we sent a single ship with a translator and a negotiator. We discovered that these were refugees from the outer spiral conflict, desperately searching for a new home. Their ships looked threatening because they had been forced to arm themselves against pirates and hostile forces during their long journey. The hologram now showed the refugee ships landing peacefully on one of humanity's colony worlds. We could have chosen war. It would have been easier. It would have been safer. Instead, we chose to help them. Today, those refugees are productive members of human society, and their advanced medical knowledge has saved thousands of lives. The chamber was completely quiet now. Some representatives leaned forward in their seats, listening more carefully than before. This is what humans offer the galaxy, Sarah continued. Not just ships and soldiers, but a different way of thinking about problems. We believe that most conflicts come from fear and misunderstanding. We believe that most enemies can become friends if someone is willing to take the first step toward peace. Lord Vexthara's voice was cold when he responded. Beautiful sentiment. But what happens when you encounter an enemy that cannot be reasoned with? What happens when peace is not an option? Sarah's voice remained steady, but something harder entered her tone. Then we fight. And when humans fight, we fight to win. But we never fight to destroy when we can fight to protect. We never choose war when we can choose peace. The voting began almost immediately. Species after species cast their decision. The electronic board above the chamber showed the results in real time. No, no, no. Every single vote was against humanity's membership. The final tally appeared. 847 votes against, 0 votes for. Not a single species had voted to accept humanity into the Defense Coalition. The Council Speaker, an ancient being whose species had founded the coalition thousands of years ago, spoke the formal judgment. The application of the human species for membership in the Intergalactic Defense Coalition is rejected. Furthermore, humanity is banned from reapplying for membership for a period of 500 standard years. Sarah gathered her material slowly. She felt the weight of disappointment, but also something else, a strange sense of relief as if a burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She walked back to the speaking platform one final time. The human delegation accepts the Council's decision, she said. We will not force our way into an organization that does not want us. But I will say this, the galaxy is a dangerous place. Threats emerge from the darkness between stars. When that day comes, when you need someone willing to stand between civilization and chaos, remember that you chose to face it alone. She turned and walked toward the exit. Behind her, the chamber erupted in laughter and dismissive comments. Several representatives made jokes about human arrogance. Others discussed how they had saved the galaxy from a dangerous and unstable species. Sarah never looked back. She had delivered her message and humanity's offer. What the galaxy chose to do with that offer was no longer her responsibility. As the great doors of the council chamber closed behind her, Sarah Chen began the long journey back to Earth, carrying with her the news that would change everything. 5 years had passed since the Galactic Council rejected humanity's application. The great hall that had once echoed with laughter at human expense now buzzed with nervous energy as representatives discussed a problem that grew worse each day. Trade routes that had been safe for centuries were now dangerous paths through pirate-infested space. The Meridian Corridor, once protected by human patrol ships, had seen 17 major attacks in the past month alone. Cargo vessels traveled in heavily armed convoys, and even then, many never reached their destinations. Lord Vexthera stood at the central podium, his blue skin pale with worry. "The situation in Sector 7 has become completely unacceptable," he announced to the assembled council. "Zephyrian merchant vessels are being attacked daily. Our trade with the outer colonies has dropped by 60%. General Skardash's massive form shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The Draconian Empire faces similar problems. Without human patrol ships maintaining order in the neutral zones, every petty warlord and criminal gang thinks they can establish their own territory." The crystalline ethereal representative chimed softly, the translation coming through with unusual emotion. "Our meditation colonies report constant disturbances. The spiritual balance of entire sectors has been disrupted by violence and chaos. What none of them wanted to admit was that the humans had been quietly keeping the peace in dozens of systems. Their ships had been a common sight along major trade routes, not enforcing any particular law but simply being present. Pirates and raiders had learned to avoid areas where human vessels might appear unexpectedly. Now those ships were gone. Humanity had withdrawn completely from galactic affairs after the Council's rejection. They had recalled their patrol fleets, closed their diplomatic offices, and shut down their monitoring stations. The galaxy had wanted to handle things without human interference, and humans had given them exactly what they asked for. The insectoid hive representative spoke through his translator, the mechanical voice unable to convey the distress his people felt. "Our trade agreements with over 30 species depended on human mediators. Humans had a gift for finding solutions that satisfied all parties. Without them, negotiations have collapsed into arguments and conflicts. This was another unexpected consequence of humanity's absence. Humans had served as neutral mediators in countless disputes, their relative newness to galactic politics making them acceptable to all sides. They had no ancient rivalries or territorial claims to complicate negotiations. When humans stepped back, old tensions between species began to resurface. The Aquatic Federation representative's tanks bubbled with agitation as he spoke. The territorial dispute between our worlds and the Silicon Collective has escalated to military action. Human negotiators would have prevented this. They had ways of making both sides see reason. Ways of making both sides see reason, repeated the council speaker thoughtfully. The ancient being had ruled over council sessions for longer than some civilizations had existed, and he was beginning to understand something that disturbed him deeply. Deep in the archives beneath the council building, automated systems had been tracking and analyzing data for the past 5 years. The computers were not emotional beings capable of pride or prejudice. They simply recorded facts and calculated trends. What they found was alarming. Crime rates in sectors previously patrolled by human ships had increased by 340%. Interspecies conflicts had risen by 210%. Trade disputes that once took days to resolve now stretched on for months. The galactic economy was becoming less stable, less efficient, less safe. But the computers detected something else as well. Strange energy readings at the very edge of explored space. Long-range sensors picked up massive objects moving in the void between galaxies. The signatures were unlike anything in the databases of any known species. Deep space monitoring stations, many of them built by human engineers, began detecting the signals 3 years after humanity's withdrawal. At first, the readings seemed like equipment malfunctions. The objects were too large, moving too fast, generating too much energy to be possible. Dr. Kethmara, the Council's chief science advisor, had been studying the data for months. The tall, thin scientist belonged to a species known for their analytical abilities, and what he found in the sensor readings kept him awake during his sleep cycles. "Council speaker," he said during a private meeting in the archives, "I believe we are detecting the approach of an extragalactic force. The energy signatures match theoretical models for massive biomechanical constructs, possibly ships of some kind." The council speaker examined the data with growing alarm. "How massive? How many?" Conservative estimates suggest individual vessels over 50 kilometers in length. The fleet appears to number in the thousands, possibly tens of thousands. They are approaching from the direction of the Magellanic Clouds. How long until they reach our galaxy? Dr. Kethmara's response sent a chill through the ancient council speaker's body. At their current rate of approach, approximately 18 months. Maybe less if they accelerate. The council speaker authorized an immediate deep archive search for any historical records of extragalactic contact. What the archives revealed was worse than anyone had imagined. Buried in the oldest records, in data files so ancient that most species had forgotten they existed, were warnings left by civilizations that no longer walked the stars. The record spoke of the Devourers, a force that had appeared from dark space millions of years ago. The ancient files described massive biomechanical ships that consumed entire star systems for fuel. They converted matter directly into energy, leaving nothing behind but empty space where solar systems had once existed. The records indicated that the previous invasion had been stopped, but at enormous cost. Entire species had been wiped out in the fighting. The files contained one particularly disturbing detail. The Devourers adapted to any weapon used against them. They learned from each attack and became immune to it. Traditional military tactics had proven almost useless against their ability to evolve and adapt in real time. As if the universe wanted to emphasize the growing threat, the ancient warning buoys began to activate. These devices had been placed at the galaxy's edge millions of years ago by long-dead civilizations. They had remained silent for so long that most species had forgotten they existed. Now they woke up, broadcasting a simple message in every language known to galactic civilization. The Devourers return. Prepare for the end of all things. The first activation occurred in draconian space. General Skardash himself was commanding a training exercise when every ship in his fleet suddenly received the warning transmission. The message repeated itself continuously for 6 hours before the ancient buoy finally went silent forever. Within days, similar activations occurred throughout the galaxy. Each buoy transmitted the same warning before burning out its ancient power systems. The pattern suggested that something was triggering them as it approached, something that the builders of these devices had considered the greatest possible threat. The council convened in emergency session. Representatives who had spent years arguing about trade routes and territorial disputes now faced the possibility that none of those things would matter in 18 months. We need to contact every military force in the galaxy, General Skardash declared. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon system. This threat is beyond what any single species can handle. Agreed, chimed the ethereal representative. Our psychic abilities detected disturbances in space-time itself. Whatever approaches us operates on principles we do not understand. Lord Vexithera spoke the thought that was in everyone's mind, but that no one wanted to voice. Should we contact the humans? The question hung in the air like a toxic gas. Every representative in the chamber knew that humanity possessed advanced military technology and tactical expertise that might be crucial in the coming conflict. But contacting them would mean admitting that the Council had made a mistake 5 years ago. They are not members of the Defense Coalition, the insectoid hive representative pointed out. We have no formal mechanism for requesting their assistance. They withdrew from galactic affairs entirely, added the Aquatic Federation delegate. They may not even respond to our communications. The council speaker raised a hand for silence. The question before us is not whether to contact humanity. The question is whether we are prepared to face this threat without them. General Skardash's reptilian features twisted into what might have been embarrassment. The Draconian Empire's military analysts have studied human tactical innovations extensively. Their approach to warfare combines elements that should not work together but somehow do. They might find solutions that we cannot see. But they were rejected from the coalition, Lord Vexithara protested. We voted unanimously that they were too dangerous, too unpredictable to be trusted with galactic security. And now, the council speaker said quietly, we may discover whether we were right to fear their unpredictability, or whether we should have feared what would happen without it. The debate continued for hours, but the underlying truth was becoming clear to everyone in the chamber. The galaxy faced a threat unlike anything they had encountered before, and they had deliberately cut themselves off from the one species that specialized in finding solutions to impossible. The first Devourer ships emerged from the dark space between galaxies like nightmares made real. They appeared at the edge of the outer rim, in a sector so remote that the initial sighting reports were dismissed as sensor malfunctions or hallucinations brought on by deep space isolation. Captain Mordun of the Zephyrian survey vessel Blue Dawn was conducting routine stellar mapping when his sensors detected something that shouldn't exist. The object was massive beyond comprehension, easily 50 kilometers from end to end, and it was moving through space at speeds that should have torn apart any known material. Sensors must be damaged, his navigator reported, checking and rechecking the readings. Nothing that large can move that fast. The structural stress alone would destroy it. Captain Morden ordered a closer look through the ship's main telescopic array. What he saw through the viewer made him wish the sensors had been malfunctioning. The ship that filled his screen was unlike anything in any galactic database. Its hull seemed to be part metal and part living tissue, with sections that pulsed like a beating heart. Massive tendrils extended from its sides, reaching out into space as if tasting the vacuum itself. "Get me a communications link to Zephyrian Command," Captain Morden ordered. "Emergency priority. Tell them we have contact with an unknown species." The transmission had barely begun when the alien vessel noticed the small survey ship. Without warning, without any attempt at communication, the massive craft opened fire. But these were not normal energy weapons. Beams of dark energy lashed out from the alien ship, and wherever they struck, matter simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not scattered into particles, but completely removed from reality as if it had never been there at all. The Blue Dawn's shields lasted less than 3 seconds. Captain Mordoon had just enough time to transmit his sensor readings to Zephyrian Command before his ship vanished into nothingness, leaving no debris, no energy signature, no trace that it had ever existed. Zephyrian Command received the transmission and immediately forwarded it to the Galactic Council. Within hours, emergency fleets from a dozen species were racing toward the outer rim to investigate. What they found there changed everything. The Devourer fleet had not stopped with the destruction of one survey ship. They were systematically consuming everything in their path. Star systems that had existed for billions of years were simply gone, leaving behind empty space where planets, asteroids, and even the stars themselves had been. General Skardash arrived with the first Draconian response fleet, 12 battleships that represented some of the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. His ships took position at the edge of the affected zone and began scanning for enemies. "There," his tactical officer reported, "massive energy signatures bearing 27 Mark IV. Multiple contacts count as General. The computer says there are over 3,000 individual ships." Through the view screen, General Skardash could see them. The Devourer fleet moved through space like a living organism, individual ships seeming to communicate with each other through some unknown method. They flowed around obstacles and coordinated their movements with perfect precision. "All ships, battle formation," General Skardash ordered. "Prepare for engagement. Target the lead vessels." The Draconian fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons, particle beam weapons, quantum torpedoes, and fusion missiles streaked through space toward the alien ships. The weapons struck their targets with tremendous force, energies that should have vaporized entire cities. The Devourer ships absorbed the attacks without taking any visible damage. Worse, their hulls began to change, adapting to the weapons being used against them. Within minutes, the same weapons that had struck them initially had no effect at all. "Impossible," General Skardash whispered. "Nothing can adapt that quickly." The Devourer ships returned fire. Their dark energy beams lashed out across space, and wherever they struck a Draconian vessel, that ship simply vanished. Not destroyed in an explosion of debris, but completely erased from existence. In less than 10 minutes, the entire Draconian response fleet was gone, leaving General Skardash as the only survivor in an escape pod that had been ignored by the enemy. The news of the defeat reached the Council within hours. 12 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy had been destroyed without inflicting any meaningful damage on the enemy. Worse, the Devourer fleet had not even slowed down. They continued their advance into galactic space, consuming everything in their path. Emergency sessions convened on every civilized world. The Ethereal Council tried to contact the invaders through psychic communication, but their mental probes encountered something so alien and hostile that 3 of their most powerful telepaths fell into permanent comas from the contact. "They are not truly alive," reported the surviving ethereal representative, his crystalline form flickering with distress. "But they are not machines either. They are something between life and death, creation and destruction. Their minds, if they can be called minds, think only of consumption and growth." The Zephyrian fleet arrived next, led by Lord Vexus Thera himself aboard their newest battlecruiser. The Zephyrians had learned from the Draconian defeat and brought different weapons: gravitational disruptors, dimensional rifts, and reality-warping devices that attacked the very fabric of spacetime itself. The results were the same. The Devourer ships adapted to each new weapon type within minutes of being attacked. What should have been reality-breaking assaults were absorbed and integrated into their defenses. The Zephyrian fleet lasted slightly longer than the Draconians, but the outcome was inevitable. Lord Vexthera found himself alone in space, his escape pod drifting among the empty void where his fleet had once been. Through his pod's communication system, he transmitted a final report to the Council. "They learn from everything we throw at them." His voice was filled with despair. "Every weapon, every tactic, every strategy becomes useless after a single use. How do you fight an enemy that becomes immune to whatever hurts it?" The pattern repeated across multiple sectors. The Granite Lords sent their massive fortress ships mobile battle stations the size of small moons. The Devourer ships consumed them like snacks, their biomechanical forms growing larger and more complex with each victory. The Insectoid Hive tried swarm tactics, sending thousands of small fighters to overwhelm the enemy through sheer numbers. The Devourers deployed their own swarm response, creating smaller versions of themselves that hunted down and consumed every hive fighter. Within hours, they had developed permanent defenses against small ship attacks. Each defeat made the situation worse. The Devourer ships were not just immune to weapons, they were learning and growing stronger. Their fleet expanded as they consumed more matter and energy. Their tactics improved as they encountered different fighting styles. They were becoming more dangerous with every engagement. The Aquatic Federation tried a different approach, using stealth technology to approach unseen. Their ships could bend light around themselves, becoming invisible to most sensors. It didn't matter. The Devourers detected them through methods that no galactic scientist understood, and destroyed them just as easily as they had destroyed everyone else. 3 months after the first sighting, the Devourer fleet had consumed 17 star systems and defeated every military force sent against them. They had grown from 3,000 ships to over 8,000, each new vessel built from the matter of consumed worlds and destroyed fleets. The Council convened an emergency session as reports came in of the fleet's continued advance. Their next target appeared to be the Meridian sector, home to over 40 billion sentient beings across 12 different species. "We need new ideas," the Council speaker announced to the assembled representatives. "Everything we have tried has failed. Traditional military tactics are useless against an enemy that adapts to our weapons." Dr. Kethmara presented his analysis of the threat. The Devourer ships appear to be part biological, part technological. They consume matter and energy to fuel both their movement and their reproduction. Each ship contains what appears to be a distributed intelligence that shares information with the entire fleet instantaneously. "Can we disrupt their communications?" asked the Granite Lord representative. "We have tried jamming their signals, but they do not use traditional communication methods. The intelligence transfer appears to operate through quantum entanglement at a level we cannot interfere with." General Skardash, recovered from his escape pod and promoted to Supreme Military Commander of all galactic forces, studied the tactical displays with growing frustration. "Every strategy we develop becomes useless after one battle. They adapt faster than we can innovate." The ethereal representative chimed softly. "Our meditation has revealed possible futures. In most timelines, the galaxy falls within 6 months. The Devourers consume all civilized worlds and continue expanding until they have consumed all matter in this galaxy. Are there any timelines where we win?" Lord Vexthera asked desperately. "Very few. And in the message reached Earth 3 days after the Galactic Council's desperate vote. It arrived at the primary communication center in Geneva, where it was immediately forwarded to the Global Defense Committee. Within hours, the transmission was being analyzed by the same team that had helped prepare Ambassador Sarah Chen for her appearance before the Council 5 years earlier. The message was formal and diplomatic, but the desperation behind the carefully chosen words was impossible to miss. The Council was requesting immediate military assistance against an extragalactic threat that had already destroyed their most powerful fleets. They offered full membership in the Defense Coalition, complete access to galactic technology, and territorial rights to any system humanity desired. Admiral James Rodriguez, the head of Earth's Space Defense Force, read the message 3 times before calling an emergency session of the Global Defense Committee. The committee members gathered in the secure conference room beneath the United Nations building in New York, the same room where humanity had debated its response to the Council's original rejection. "So they want our help now," said General Patricia Kim, her voice carrying 5 years of frustration, "after they laughed us out of their chambers and banned us from reapplying for 500 years. "The situation appears to be genuinely desperate," replied Dr. Elena Vasquez, the committee's chief scientist. "Our deep space monitoring stations have been tracking the same energy signatures they describe. The threat is real." Admiral Rodriguez activated the holographic display at the center of the conference table. It showed the current positions of human military assets throughout the solar system and the nearby colonies. What the display revealed would have surprised any alien observer. Humanity had not been idle during their 5 years of isolation from galactic politics. Earth's orbital shipyards, which had produced 300 vessels for their original application to the Council, now showed completion schedules for over 2,000 new ships. Many of these vessels incorporated design principles that no other galactic species had ever considered. "The Prometheus project is ahead of schedule," reported Admiral Rodriguez. "We now have operational vessels using quantum displacement drives, reality anchoring systems, and temporal stabilization fields. Most of our fleet incorporates technology that was purely theoretical when we first approached the Council." Dr. Vasquez pulled up detailed technical specifications on the display. "The isolation actually helped us in some ways. Without access to established galactic technology, we were forced to develop our own solutions to problems that other species solve with conventional methods. Our ships don't work the way alien vessels work." General Kim leaned forward, studying the tactical data. "The question is whether we want to help them at all. They made their opinion of humanity very clear 5 years ago. Why should we risk human lives to save civilizations that consider us dangerous primitives?" The debate that followed echoed similar discussions happening in government centers around the world. Some argued for complete non-involvement, believing that the galaxy had made its choice and should face the consequences. Others felt that humanity had a moral obligation to help, regardless of past insults. The deciding factor came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Sarah Chen, now retired from active diplomatic service but still serving as an advisor to the Defense Committee, requested permission to address the meeting. 5 years ago, I stood before the Galactic Council and offered them partnership," she began, her voice carrying the same quiet dignity it had shown in the council chambers. "They rejected that offer, and we accepted their decision with grace. But I also made them a promise." She activated her personal datapad and displayed a quote from the transcript of her final speech to the Council. "When that day comes, when you need someone willing to stand between civilization and chaos, remember that you chose to face it alone. That day has come," Ambassador Chen continued. "The question now is whether we meant what we said. Are we the kind of species that helps only when it benefits us? Or are we the kind that helps because it's right?" The committee voted unanimously to respond to the Council's request, but their response was not what the aliens expected. 3 hours after the committee meeting ended, Earth transmitted its reply to the Galactic Council. The message was brief and spoke in Ambassador Chen's voice, recorded in the same diplomatic chamber where she had received the Council's original rejection. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," her image said calmly, "we have received your request for military assistance against the extragalactic threat you describe. The human government has carefully considered your offer of council membership and territorial concessions in exchange for our help." She paused, and for a moment, every alien who watched the transmission thought they were about to receive another rejection, this time when they desperately needed help. "Our response is as follows. We decline your offers of membership and territory. However, we do not require council permission to defend innocent life against an existential threat. We will provide assistance not as members of your coalition, but as representatives of humanity's commitment to protecting civilization wherever it may be found." The transmission ended with Admiral Rodriguez appearing on screen. "Human defense fleets are already moving to intercept the hostile force. We estimate contact with enemy vessels in 72 hours. We suggest you evacuate all civilian populations from the projected battle zones." The message caused chaos in the council chambers. Representatives shouted questions at the communication screen, demanding to know how many ships humanity was sending, what weapons they possessed, and what their battle plan might be. The screen remained dark. Humanity had said everything they intended to say. What the Council didn't know was that human ships had been moving into position for weeks. Earth's deep space monitoring network had been tracking the Devourer fleet since before the Council even realized the threat existed. Human vessels had been shadowing the alien fleet from a distance, studying their tactics and analyzing their technology. The first human ships to encounter the Devourer fleet were not warships but science vessels. The research ship New Horizons, operating under complete stealth protocols, had been observing the aliens for over a month. Its findings had been transmitted back to Earth and formed the basis for humanity's military response. Captain Maria Santos, commanding the New Horizons from a position just outside the detection range of the alien fleet, had watched the destruction of multiple galactic fleets with growing understanding of the enemy's capabilities. They adapt to direct attacks, she reported to Earth Command. But there are patterns in their adaptation process. They respond to immediate threats but seem to have difficulty with indirect or delayed effects. They also show consistent behavior when consuming matter. They prioritize high-energy sources and seem to require time to process new materials. This intelligence had shaped humanity's battle plans in ways that would have puzzled other species. Instead of approaching the Devourer fleet directly, human ships began appearing throughout the galaxy in locations that seemed unrelated to the alien advance. Human evacuation vessels, ships designed for rapid transport of large populations, began arriving at threatened worlds days before the Devourers reached them. These ships didn't wait for formal requests or diplomatic clearance. They simply appeared in orbit and began broadcasting evacuation procedures in every known galactic language. The evacuation of Meridian Prime became the first example of human military doctrine in action. The planet had a population of 12 billion beings from 6 different species, far too many for the local government to evacuate using their own resources. When the human evacuation fleet arrived, it consisted of vessels unlike anything in galactic databases. The ships were enormous, with internal spaces that seemed to be larger than their external dimensions should have allowed. They used some kind of spatial compression technology that permitted them to carry millions of evacuees in comfortable conditions. But the evacuation procedures were what truly surprised the alien populations. Human organizers didn't separate evacuees by species or class or social status. They treated everyone equally, prioritizing the young, the elderly, and the injured regardless of what planet they came from or what species they belonged to. "Form orderly lines, please," announced human volunteers in dozens of languages. "Families stay together. Medical cases to the front. Everyone will be evacuated, no one gets left behind." The speed and efficiency of the human evacuation impressed even the skeptical Zephyrian observers. Within 36 hours, the entire population of Meridian Prime had been moved to safety, transported to secure locations in sectors well away from the Devourer advance. Similar evacuations were taking place throughout the threatened regions. Human ships appeared wherever civilian populations needed protection, and in every case, they succeeded in moving entire planetary populations to safety before the Devourers arrived. But the evacuations were only part of humanity's strategy. While some human ships were saving lives, others were preparing for the battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. The human battle fleet that finally revealed itself to the Devourer force was unlike anything the aliens had encountered before. The ships didn't form traditional battle lines or use conventi. The Battle of the Magellan Strait, as it would later be known, began when the Devourer fleet reached the system where human forces had been laying their trap for 3 days. From the perspective of galactic observers monitoring the engagement, what happened next defied all conventional understanding of space warfare. The human fleet didn't attack. Instead, they continued their seemingly random activities throughout the system, launching more devices, broadcasting more signals, and generating increasingly complex energy patterns. The Devourer ships, following their established behavior, moved to investigate and consume these new energy sources. Admiral Rodriguez watched from the bridge of the Indomitable as the alien fleet spread out across the system, exactly as human tactical computers had predicted they would. Each Devourer ship moved to consume what appeared to be the most attractive energy source in its vicinity. unknowingly positioning themselves in a three-dimensional grid that had been carefully designed by human strategists. Phase 1 complete, reported Commander Sarah Kim from the tactical station. All Devourer vessels are in position. Energy field generators are active and synchronized. Begin Phase 2, Admiral Rodriguez ordered. All ships, activate reality anchors on my mark. Throughout the system, human vessels simultaneously activated devices that no other galactic species had ever successfully developed. Reality anchors were theoretical technology that most scientists believed to be impossible. Devices that could lock the local space-time continuum into a fixed state, preventing any changes to the fundamental laws of physics within their area of effect. The effect on the Devourer ships was immediate and dramatic. For the first time since their invasion began, their adaptive abilities simply stopped working. The biomechanical vessels found themselves unable to modify their defenses or change their capabilities. They were locked into their current configuration by the reality anchors, unable to evolve or adapt. But humanity's strategy went far beyond simply preventing the aliens from adapting. The reality anchors were only the first step in a plan that used the Devourer's own consumption abilities against them. Phase 3, Admiral Rodriguez announced, activate the quantum resonance network. The thousands of devices that human ships had been scattering throughout the system suddenly revealed their true purpose. They weren't energy sources or weapons. They were components of a massive quantum resonance network that turned the entire star system into a single, enormous machine. The network began generating what human scientists called a consumption cascade, a quantum effect that forced the Devourer ships to consume energy from each other rather than from external sources. The aliens' own feeding mechanisms were turned against them, creating a chain reaction that spread throughout their fleet. From the bridge of a Zephyrian observer ship, safely positioned at the edge of the system, Lord Vexithera watched in amazement as the Devourer fleet began to literally eat itself. Ships that had been invulnerable to every weapon in the galactic arsenal were being destroyed by their own consumption drives. Impossible, he whispered. How did they turn the alien strengths into weaknesses? The answer came from human tactical philosophy that no other species had ever developed. Instead of trying to destroy an undefeatable enemy, humanity had chosen to defeat them by making them defeat themselves. The quantum resonance network didn't attack the Devourers. It simply redirected their own attacks inward. But the battle was far from over. The Devourer fleet was massive, and even with the consumption cascade reducing their numbers, thousands of ships remained. These vessels, no longer able to adapt but still possessing tremendous firepower, began attacking everything in range with desperate fury. Human ships found themselves under assault from dark energy weapons that could erase matter from existence. The difference was that humanity had been preparing for this exact scenario for 5 years, and their vessels were designed with the specific threat in mind. The UES Valor, commanded by Captain Chen Wei, took a direct hit from a Devourer weapon that should have completely destroyed the ship. Instead, the vessel's hull flickered for a moment and then solidified again, apparently undamaged. Temporal shields holding steady, reported the ship's engineer. The attack hit us, but it hit us yesterday. The temporal displacement field redirected the damage to a point in time before the shields were activated. This was another uniquely human innovation. Defensive systems that didn't block attacks but redirected them through time. The technology was so complex that human scientists barely understood it themselves, but it worked. Devourer weapons that erased matter from existence were useless if that matter existed in a different temporal frame. The battle continued for 6 hours, with human ships using tactics that combined advanced technology with pure human stubbornness. When their weapons failed, they improvised. When their defenses were overwhelmed, they adapted. When conventional strategies proved inadequate, they invented new ones on the spot. Captain Lisa Park of the UES Defiance found her ship's quantum resonance generators damaged by enemy fire. Without the generators, her vessel couldn't contribute to the consumption cascade that was destroying the Devourer fleet. A conventional military response would have been to withdraw for repairs. Captain Park chose a different approach. She ordered her ship to ram the largest Devourer vessel in range but not to destroy it. Instead, the Defiance used its momentum to physically push the alien ship into a resonance field generated by another human vessel. The collision destroyed both ships, but it also created a feedback loop that eliminated 12 more Devourer vessels. "This is insane," transmitted General Skardash from his observation post. "They're using their own ships as weapons. How species fights like this?" Admiral Rodriguez's response came over the general communication channel. "Every human ship in this fleet volunteered for this mission, knowing they might not return. When you're fighting for the survival of civilization, conventional tactics become irrelevant. You do whatever works." The turning point came when human forces activated the final component of their strategy. Deep within the system's star, human engineers had been working for 3 days to modify the stellar core using gravitational manipulation technology. The star itself became a weapon, generating a pulse of modified solar energy that disrupted the quantum structure of the remaining Devourer ships. The pulse didn't destroy the alien vessels directly. Instead, it forced them to process solar energy through their consumption systems. But human engineers had modified the energy in such a way that consuming it caused the Devourer ships to begin consuming themselves from the inside out. Within minutes, the remaining alien fleet was reduced to scattered debris floating in space. The invasion that had threatened to consume the entire galaxy was over. The aftermath was profound. Galactic Council observers who had watched the battle couldn't understand what they had seen. Human tactics defied every principle of space warfare that civilized species had developed over thousands of years. They turned physics itself into a weapon, Dr. Kethmara reported to the Council. They used the enemy's own abilities as the mechanism of their destruction. They fought not just with ships and weapons, but with time, space, and the fundamental forces of reality. Lord Vexthera's report was even more disturbing to the Council's sense of superiority. The humans didn't just defeat the Devourers. They made defeating them look easy. They used strategies that we couldn't even understand, much less counter. But the most unsettling observation came from General Skardash. They fought with complete disregard for their own safety, but complete concern for everyone else's safety. They sacrificed themselves to protect civilians of species that had rejected and insulted them. I have never seen such a combination of tactical brilliance and moral commitment. The Council met an emergency session to discuss humanity's victory and what it meant for galactic civilization. The debate was unlike any in the Council's history. "We must offer them anything they want," argued the ethereal representative. "Full membership, territorial concessions, technology transfers, anything. They have proven themselves to be the most capable military force in the galaxy. They have also proven themselves to be completely unpredictable," countered Lord Vexthera. "How do we know they won't use these same capabilities against us? How do we know we can trust them?" The answer came when Ambassador Sarah Chen requested permission to address the Council once more. She was older now, her hair gray and her movements slower, but her voice carried the same quiet dignity it had 5 years earlier. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began, standing at the same podium where she had been rejected years before. "We have received your generous offers of membership, territory, and technological exchange. We are grateful for your recognition of our service to galactic civilization." The chamber was completely silent. Every representative knew that humanity now held all the power in the relationship. They could demand anything and receive it. However, Ambassador Chen continued, "Humanity declines these offers. We do not wish to join your council as conquerors or as beings to be feared. We wish